All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Here we go. This is a workshop. This is where we go to work together and look at national championships throughout the years. Here's the deal. If you have yet to do a workshop here at the Voice of College Football, this is not going to be me just ripping through things with a bunch of graphics already pre-produced, because we are working it out as we go. Because for me to work it out year to year and go through the entire history of college football and go through all the national championships would take forever, and then build the graphics and then come on and do a video. Nope, we're going to do a workshop, do it all together. We did this last off season, so we're not going to do it to the extent that we did it last off season, where we did one night where we did the college football playoff era, and we went through all the years from 2014 through 23, and we dissected every year. And obviously that's pretty cut and dry. We're not going to challenge anybody's national championships during the CFP, although there are some notes, there are some addendums to be made, but not taking away any national championships during the last 10 years. Then we get back to the BCS, and it gets a little trickier, of course. And then on from there. We made it all the way back to 1980, I do believe. I've looked at some of the videos, reviewed some of the work that we did last off season. So it's not going to be as exhaustive this time around, because I think we got it fairly nailed down for the last 40 years or so. And we're going to go back beyond that. Actually, the intent, folks, was to do the all-time rankings first. So I thought, okay, we did our 2024 program rankings. Check them out last night. We presented those last night, 1 through 134 for 2024. Not team rankings, program rankings for 2024. Check them out. Then the intent was, if you were with us 3-4 months ago, we presented our videos where we went through every conference. We went through every conference, and we lined up all-time rankings within that conference. We looked at national championships, conference championships, bowl wins, major bowl wins, consensus All-Americans, Heisman Trophy winners, NFL draft selections, #1 selections. We went through all the major trophies won by those particular schools at the various positions, and most importantly, winning percentage. And we added it all up. We went through each conference, but we didn't add it all up and make the comparison nationally. And I got a lot of requests to do that. And it makes total sense, because we just did the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and the ACC and all the conferences, but we didn't put it all together. So that's what we were going to do tonight. However, I then thought, how can we do that yet? Because we have yet to vet out the national championships. We are not going by the AP poll. I shouldn't even have to explain why we would not go by the AP poll. So we are going to do it much more accurately. Perfectly? No, it can't be perfect. Why can't it be perfect? Because there was no playoff. If there would have been a playoff, then we would have been able to at least say, well, was the playoff fairly constructed to determine the teams in the playoff? And then, bam, there's your national champion. No dispute. We've got one national champion every year. But we all know how messy the history of college football has been. And believe me, it is going to get messy, because even reviewing, and I went all the way back through, I was going through my videos and letting my videos play as I was looking up rankings and recreating scenarios and everything that happened. I was able to get back to 1985. And we are pretty clear, meaning I'm pretty clear, and hopefully you will be, on just about every season going back to 1985. But I got to say, there are about 5 seasons. Once I present these scenarios to you, you're going to see how difficult it is to properly select a national champion. We are not going to have one national champion most seasons. I'll tell you that right now. It is not my job in this, our job, to determine who the best team was. So I am not, for example, going to 1997 and say, we only need one national champion, Michigan, Nebraska. Michigan was better. I thought they had better personnel. They played a tougher schedule. They should be the national champion. No, they both earned it. So they are both the national champion. I'm not doing split national championships or taking away national championships to say, well, you really only won a half of a national championship. No, Michigan earned the national championship. Nebraska earned the national championship. You folks can argue all you want about who would have won a game between Nebraska and Michigan. We can certainly do that at another time, but that's not what this is about. This is about 1997. Michigan earned the national championship. Nebraska also earned a national championship. Unfortunately, we had a stupid system, so they didn't play. 1994, Nebraska is the national champion. But you know what? Penn State also earned a national championship. I'm not saying that Penn State would have won a game against Nebraska, but they earned a national championship just as much as Nebraska did. Therefore, guess what? 1994, Penn State has a national championship. Not the national championship. They've got a national championship. So, but there's about 5 seasons going back to 1985, especially in the BCS era, that are awfully confusing. Awfully confusing. All right, it's going to be fun, though. Here we go. And like to let you know that we're going to go for 1 hour tonight. If you would like to extend the show, I learned this from our folks on the Michigan channel and the USC channel. They do this quite effectively. If you would like to continue the show, please support the show. We need to get to $100 in super chats, and we will continue for another hour through the night. Otherwise, we can certainly, boom, 1 hour is good. And then we will come back and we will continue this process because it's going to take a long time, believe me. Even though I've done most of the work and we're good to go for about 40 years. Before we get started, before I run through the last 40 years, which again, most of it's going to be clear cut. I'm going to do the work for you, tell you, boom, this is how I did the national championship. But there's about 5 years where I'm going to lean on you guys a little bit to provide your perspective. And again, it's not about who would have won a game, who would have been better, who was the better team. No, it's about looking at metrics of results and record. All right, before we do that, we do want to honor our calls coming in. We've got Donovan on the line. Donovan, what's going on?
How are you doing?
I'm good, Donovan. What's the good word?
So you're talking about national championships. You're saying go back to the last 40 years. Did you ever go back to when BYU won the national championship in '84?
Oh, absolutely, we have. Do me a favor, Donovan. Go on my channel sometime. Just type in 1984 BYU disputed national championship, something like that. You're going to see all sorts of videos on the 1984 national championship. Absolutely.
Okay. Because it was cut dry. They won it, and they were the number one in both polls.
Yes.
So, do you think that there by a chance that we could have 3 super conferences by the Big 12, the SEC, and the Big 10 with going 24 teams, and we have super conferences here?
Well, I hope not. I hope that doesn't happen, but it could. Certainly, yes. If the indication when the SEC and the Big 10 put together this advisory committee, I think that gives us an indication that they are working on things and they would like to control the sport. So yes, it wouldn't surprise me if that we get to that point. 24 teams, though, we're going to have many more teams than that. We're not going to. I do not see this sport at only 24 teams.
So I'm just saying, like the Big 12 can go 24, the SEC can go.
Oh,
24,
I got you.
Big 10 goes 24. We could have 3 super conference teams, power league teams, and we could have super conferences. Do you see it going that direction?
Well, we're almost there with the Big 10 at 18. And of course, they'd like Notre Dame, and they could possibly dip in with North Carolina and Florida State, et cetera. 24 is a bit of a stretch, but if you like symmetry, it could be 24, 24, 24, because the Big 12, if the ACC implodes, they're going to be there for they're going to be pouncing for the likes of the Louisvilles and NC States and Pitts and those schools. So
right.
Yeah, we could get there.
Yeah. I can see it happening very, very soon. But it probably won't happen for quite some time, maybe like maybe a couple of years or 4 years or so. I don't know.
Well, Donovan, we appreciate you being here. We're going to focus back on these national championships and
I'll
get
go
on
back
that.
in and I'll put that in on your notes on here about the BYU and so you know. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Donovan. Have a good night. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. And before we dive in, we got Chris on the line as well. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Fine. How are you, Mark?
I am doing well. What's up?
Well, I don't mean to, that guy, he brought it up. It's like, not like talking about it, honestly. I mean, there's conflicting views on who should have won the title and all that. But I think the one thing I think I've been able to show is that BYU was a legitimate contender. I don't think we can just brush them off as flash in the pan. I don't know how you feel about it, but the one thing I can tell you, assuming I know what I'm doing, which you have to kind of weigh that in consideration, was what they didn't do in 84, they did in 96. And so it's kind of like putting two pieces together, but kind of what they weren't able to do in 84, they did in 96. And so unified together, you get one title out of that.
Chris, I can't get past the comment that you made when you said you have no idea what I think.
Well,
we have talked about this ad nauseum for years. We have spent hundreds of hours at this point. I have produced videos to let you know exactly what I think. But I've got a video. Anybody can look it up. If you want to know what I think of the 1984 national championship race, all you have to do is look up that video, BYU 1984 disputed national championship, whatever you want to throw in there. You can see exactly what I think.
I know, but that's kind of where the problem comes in. You know,
well, you just told me a minute ago you had no idea what I thought.
I think I said I have no idea what you think. Yeah.
That's the point. I don't know that I could be any clearer on the topic.
You can pick whatever team you want. I mean, you're entitled and you probably should do it, but I don't think you can just throw BYU to the side and say, well, that's a team that can't have it.
I did not do that, Chris. And I wouldn't be talking to you like this if this was our first conversation about it. I did not, and I would not take away a national championship from BYU. I've not done that. Watch the video.
Well, you said supposedly that I did see the video. Come on, give me some slack. You said that a playoff would have eliminated BYU, and I'm not. Again, you're usually right, Mark. I want to be fair to you. You're almost always. I don't know that I've ever had an argument with you that I thought you were way off base or even wrong at all, but I don't know that I understand how you can say in a playoff they necessarily lose, though, without knowing who they play. And I guess it was against Florida you had them losing. I don't know.
Let me explain this, Chris. Please let me explain. There's a difference between what my opinion is.
No, you said they lose. In your video, you said
let me explain. There's a difference between my opinion. If you ask me who I think is going to win on Saturday or who would win this or that or would have won 20 years ago versus what I think should be executed. For example, in 2019, Oklahoma went to the playoff. They were the Big 12 champion. They only had one loss. I stated the minute that selection was made, it was LSU, Ohio State, Clemson. They were all undefeated. Oklahoma was the one team that had a loss with a conference championship. I clearly stated Oklahoma has earned this playoff spot. They are a conference champion. They only have one loss. But I said, my opinion is that Alabama is the best team left, not in this playoff. So if you're just going with best teams, that's my opinion. That didn't mean that I thought Alabama should be included in the playoff. Those are two separate things.
Kind of like the playoff between Texas Christian and, I mean, even though Texas Christian beat Michigan, there was the argument that Alabama should have been in there somewhere. Kind of
sure.
The same, right? In that kind of the same argument? Okay. Well, regardless, I guess I'm not convinced that a playoff's the best way to select a team, but, I mean, I'm not, Mark. I mean,
okay. That's not why we're here tonight, Chris. Do you have any comments to make about the national championships of the past?
Well, okay. I already made this comment too, and it is relevant because there is a belt. BYU played in the belt championship. To get there basically means you have to win something. So you can't just say that they weren't qualified. When they played UCLA.
I never said that.
Oh, I'm saying it. when they played UCLA, it's almost like they played in a Super Bowl. I mean, it's the same principle. And it actually, I don't know if you've ever seen that game. It actually plays out like a Super Bowl. But anyway, so they played in a title game. I mean, that's just a fact. Now, you can tell me you don't like it. You can tell me you don't really agree with the way it works, but
BYU played in what title game?
it's the belt championship. It's basically, it's pretty close to what they're doing now. It's not exactly the same, but it's close. It's like when Washington was a belt champion last year. And the reason that Michigan won a championship was they took the belt away. So it would have been Washington, except for they had to play another game, and then they lost it to Michigan. So Michigan's the belt champion right now. It's the belt.
Yes. Yes. And that's a fun, frivolous thing to keep track of, but it's
But
worthless and meaningless. It
No, it
doesn't
isn't,
matter. It's a novelty. It's a
No, it
fun
isn't.
thing to keep track of. It's
more than
meaningless.
that. No, it's definitely more than that. Anybody that beats Michigan's going to be the belt champion. And that's if they don't lose, then they.
And there will be no one in America that will know that outside of you.
Well, that's not really true. I mean, I think there's people that
Okay.
are in.
13 other people will know about the belt championship once
On the
Michigan loses a game.
I noticed in the playoff games, the ones that you say are playoff games, I noticed that they give a belt away. Maybe you haven't noticed it, but I don't know that they're doing it to appease me. Probably not. But I've seen several players carry the belt. You can say it doesn't matter.
Okay,
but-
Chris, we're not here to discuss the belt championship
Okay, that's
tonight.
fine.
I will be happy to discuss that with you at another time.
I want to say one more thing, if you'll let me. Okay, the other thing I want to tell you, in '85, and this is true, had Air Force beaten BYU, the national championship would have been between Air Force and Penn State. No, it would have, Mark. That's a fact. But they lost to BYU, and so instead of Air Force, it was Oklahoma.
Air Force had one loss. You are correct.
No,
They
to
would have
BYU.
been undefeated had they defeated BYU. We don't know what the AP voters would have selected, but I am pretty sure that they would not have elevated an undefeated Air Force team past an 11-1 Oklahoma team.
Well, I can't say I know that either, Mark, but that was what a lot of people seem to think. After
Well,
they-
none of us know that because it didn't happen.
Well, it didn't happen, but there's more to it than that. Even BYU, after they beat Air Force, then they lost to Ohio State. So you want to cut BYU down if you want to. You're also cutting Ohio State down by doing it. And there's one more thing. I just told you the one championship that BYU claims. It's a legitimate title, but if you don't want to help your own team, the 57, 61, and 2012, those are disputed titles.
All right, Chris, thanks for being here. We are not here to go through the belt championships and some of your.
If you don't want them to have those titles, then you can cut them out. But that's
Yes.
the same idea. It's the same idea.
Thanks for calling, Chris.
All right, thank you.
Not tonight. Not tonight. Not tonight. Okay, here we go. And I apologize because we do not have graphics to accompany this because it took me long enough just to weed through every season and then listen back to what we discussed last off season. So maybe some of you were here last off season because we went from 2023 all the way back to 1980. We did not get to the 70s. So we're going to try to summarize this a little bit, but there are some seasons that are ridiculous. I'm telling you. Okay. The easy part is the CFP, but we're still going to go through it for accounting purposes. 2023, who's the national champion? Michigan, of course. However, as a footnote, an addendum, Florida State did not receive a shot to win the national championship. Did they earn a chance to play for the national championship? Yes, they did. They were 13-0 and had a conference championship. So Florida State, I'm not awarding them a national championship, but I'm going to put footnotes. I'm going to put footnotes under these seasons to say Michigan's the national champion for 2023. Florida State earned the right to play for a national championship. Now, I will tell you that if Florida State would have defeated an excellent Georgia team, I would be saying, Florida State, claim a national championship. I'm going to give you a national championship, not the national championship, Michigan fans, but a share of the national championship. But that didn't happen. They got blown out by 1,000,000 points. So it did not happen. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. So 2023 in the books, Michigan's the outright champion, of course. But an addendum, a footnote, is Florida State did not get a chance to play. Erica, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Have not heard from you for a while. Hope you're geared up for the Hawkeye season. 3 weeks away, 3 to 4 weeks away. We're actually 3 weeks from today away from week 0, Florida State and Georgia Tech. And then, of course, 4 weeks away from Iowa taking on Illinois State, I believe. Some dollars to give you props for dealing with Chris. You've got the patience of a saint. Go Hawks. Thank you so much for that, Erica. That is kind of you. I could not be quite as patient as I typically am. I do think I dealt with him in a kind way. All right, 2022, Georgia's the national champion. There is nothing to say about that. Nobody got left out that should have been there. Nothing like that. 2022, easy, Georgia, national champion. 2021, Georgia, national champion. Easy, done. Nobody else deserved to be in the playoff that was not there. You could say Notre Dame was 11-1. Cincinnati got in at 13-0. Of course, they beat them head-to-head, but there were some people out there that said Notre Dame played a better schedule, but Cincinnati won the game head-to-head. No addendum there. We're going to cross that one off, but I just thought that was a footnote to the season. Georgia is your 2021 national champion. 2020, Bama won the national championship, undefeated, outright, no question. They are the champion. However, let's understand, Notre Dame made the field at 10-1. They lost a conference championship game by 24 points. Texas A&M had a legitimate gripe at 9-1, same record as Notre Dame. Cincinnati had a gripe, especially considering what happened the next season. Cincinnati was 9-0, and they came that close to beating an excellent Georgia team in the Peach Bowl. Oklahoma also had a gripe as the team that won 8 consecutive games and won the Big 12 championship, unlike Notre Dame, who did not win a conference championship. So again, does not affect the national championship with Bama outright in 2020. But let's understand, Texas A&M, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma had a claim to a playoff spot. 2019's LSU. It's LSU. That's all there is to it. I did note in the conversation with Chris, in no way do I believe that Alabama should have been selected for the playoff in 2019. However, this is kind of different territory than what we're navigating tonight. Tonight, we're simply going results, record, resume, that's it. But in 2019, let's face it, and I sat here, well, I was actually about 1,000 miles away, but I was sitting like in this, well, it wasn't even this chair. I just bought this chair about 3 months ago. You get the point. We were sitting here together after the playoff was announced in 2019. And the point that I made to Chris was there's a difference between what I consider to be just sheer opinion versus attacking the decision logically or attacking the situation or what we are trying to navigate here logically. I'm not selecting national champions just based on, oh, I think that they were better. They would have won a national championship game. They're going to be the national champion. No, we're not doing that here. This is about logic and just trying to make the correct decision. So 2019, I clearly stated after the selection, when people would ask me, did they get the 4 best teams? No, they didn't get the 4 best teams. The 4 best teams are LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama. They played a classic game against Joe Burrow, and they lost on a 2 pick sixes and a clank off the upright. Now, I'm not defending Alabama, saying that they should have been in the playoff, but I don't think there's any question that if Alabama was playing a playoff game against LSU in 2019, that would have been epic because they played a 46-41 game in Tuscaloosa. That would have been phenomenal to watch that game. They would not have been losing by 35 points at halftime to LSU, but the playoff committee got it right. Okay, that's beyond this conversation. 2018, Clemson, national champion, no doubt, undefeated 15-0. There were some issues with who got selected here. I'm not saying that the playoff committee got it wrong, but I will say that Notre Dame was 12-0, but they don't play in a conference. So they got to kick back on their couch when they should have been playing in a conference championship game. And, just think if it could have been possible, let's say, that Notre Dame could play in a conference and actually play in a conference championship game, and maybe would have played Clemson in a conference championship game like they would have in 2018. Only think if that could have happened. Oh, it did 2 years later. So Notre Dame, yeah, they went 12-0. They earned a playoff spot because they were undefeated. But what this did was it made the committee select between Oklahoma 12-1 conference champion, Ohio State 12-1 conference champion. Oklahoma selected. I'm not saying that Ohio State should have been selected over Oklahoma. I'm just saying Oklahoma got to avenge its loss against a better team in Texas than Ohio State beat in the Big Ten Championship Northwestern. So Oklahoma did not suffer that ugly, ugly loss that Ohio State did in 2018 against Purdue, but Ohio State clearly beat the better teams. They had like 4 wins against top 15 teams. So Oklahoma, Ohio State, again, this does not impact Clemson as the national champion, but there could have been different teams in the playoffs. Okay. Also, UCF was undefeated. Now, they lost their bowl game to LSU, but UCF could have been selected in 2018, just like they could have been selected in 2017. We tend to discount or just take. I don't think that people should rebel just for the sake of rebelling against authority and against decisions that are made. But I also don't think that people should be just groupthink, just take what the authorities tell you. And we could cite certainly a zillion different examples over the last 5 to 10 years about where government has led us astray, or the authorities, let's say. So I'm somewhere in the middle. Take each case as it comes, make logical decisions, use common sense. And most of the time, or much of the time, depending on your respect for that authority, you fall right in line with the policies, the guidelines, the rules, because they make sense. But when they don't, then you raise a ruckus. Okay, my point here is that Cincinnati made a playoff a few years later as an undefeated group of 5 team. UCF actually played tougher schedules. And anyway, they were left out. So let's just understand UCF was left out in 2018. Now, since they lost to LSU in the bowl game, I am not in any way suggesting that UCF should claim a 2018 national championship. It's all Clemson. But I'm also saying that there is a argument between Oklahoma and Ohio State in 2018. Okay, 2017. Now, this is your time for UCF. Bama won the national championship. Fair and square, they got into the playoff. But should they have been in the playoff? They lost a game. They did not win their division. They did not win the conference. They got into the playoff, and all credit to them. They won the national championship. They beat a good Clemson team. They beat an excellent Georgia team in overtime. They earned and won the national championship. I am not taking that away from Alabama. However, we're going to, as we go back in time year by year, we are going to hit situations where I know a lot of people would say, well, the tiebreaker should be that they won a conference championship and they didn't. They both went 11-1 and they didn't get to play each other in bowl game. Well, they won a conference championship. Well, that didn't happen in 2017 for Bama, and nobody's arguing about their national championship. 2011, Alabama, nobody's arguing about their national championship. So I'm going to be proposing some teams to, I hate to use the word share. I'll come up with a better term because it's not like I am suggesting that those two teams only get 50% of a national championship in these situations. But let's face it, Alabama lost a game. They didn't win a division. They did not win a conference. They got into the playoff. Now, who else could have been there? UCF. And in all ironies of ironies that I love the way it played out is that who'd Alabama lose to in going 13-1 to win the national championship? Well, they lost to Auburn. UCF, of course, beat Auburn. They did something that Bama could not do. They beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl. And ironically, they beat them on the same field that Alabama beat Georgia for the national championship. So again, if anybody's commenting in the comments, I cannot see it right now. But I can imagine all sorts of people are saying, well, Bama was 10 times better than UCF. Again, that's not what the exercise is here. Yes, I clearly would have put all sorts of money on Alabama to beat UCF in 2017. However, we are awarding a national championship to UCF as well. If they would have had the same record, and we will see this play out, and this is how I'm measuring group of 5 and Power 5, is that if they have the same records, and there are going to be some undefeated teams out of the group of 5, but I am not awarding them a national championship because the national champion from the Power 5 was undefeated. But if the group of 5 has a better record and they have defeated legitimate competition, either in the regular season and or the bowl games, like UCF did, defeating an Auburn team that beat number 1 Alabama, beat number 1 Georgia, and would have been in the playoff themselves had they won the SEC championship game. So if Bama was undefeated this season, they would be the sole national champion according to, again, this is the Voice of College Football national championship count. But for 2017, Bama's the national champion. UCF, claim your national championship as well. You went undefeated. You beat Auburn in the bowl game. Let's also consider here that Bama, again, makes the playoff at 11-1, did not win the conference, did not win the division. Wisconsin, they had a 1-game better record than Bama from a win total because they played in the conference championship game against Ohio State. And if you recall, had Wisconsin won the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State, they would have been in the playoff and Bama would have been out. So that also calls into question Ohio State. Now, Ohio State was, after they won their bowl game, they finished 12-2 to Bama's 13-1. So they had one more loss. So did they deserve a playoff spot? Well, Bama had the better record. They had 1 loss, Ohio State 2. But Ohio State won the Big Ten championship. So do you go conference championship? Better record. All I'm saying here is that Ohio State had a claim, Wisconsin had a claim, UCF had a claim to get into the playoff. Okay? And Bama, though, you are the national champion. Bama fans, not taking that away from you. UCF, though, claim a national championship. Okay, 2016, Clemson, done. There's nobody else in the field. The only thing you could say there is that Penn State has an argument to be in the playoff over Ohio State, similar to the Bama-Ohio State dynamic that chose Bama. You go to 2016 and you've got Ohio State. Their claim is better record, better schedule. They beat Oklahoma on the road, who won the Big 12, went to the Sugar Bowl. They beat Wisconsin on the road, a top 10 team. They had a much tougher schedule than Penn State, and they had a better record, 11-1 versus Penn State's 11-2. But of course, Penn State had head-to-head, and they went on and won the Big Ten championship. I believe, even though we've got all sorts of people here that think I'm a homer, Nobody ever said that until they knew who I rooted for. Believe me, if you weren't around 5 years ago, it was hysterical to me internally. You didn't see it on my face. Hysterical because people didn't know who I rooted for. And I wish I would have saved screenshots of all the times that people told me in the chat or people told me in the comments that I hated Ohio State. I heard that all the time, especially after 2016, because you know what I said? Ohio State does not deserve to be in the playoff. They did not earn it. They're close. They might be better than Penn State. I actually thought they were better than Penn State, but they lost head-to-head, and Penn State's the Big Ten champion, despite a worse schedule and a worse record. Look up the video. I pounded the table for Penn State in 2016. I really don't see other people doing that, standing up for other teams against their teams. That's when you know you're unbiased. Okay, we did get, we appreciate that. Dave's here. Dave, you're just about here all the time. So thank you so much for that, Dave. You are a kind individual. We appreciate you and our Voice of College Football community. You're awesome. And not just here on the national main channel, but we appreciate you guys going all over the place to support Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio State, Florida State channels, Miami channel, USC. You get great support we get great support on the USC channel, the Michigan channel. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate you. All right. So that's Clemson 2016, no doubt. 2015, Bama, no doubt. The only thing I'll say about 2015 is this happens so much in college football. This would be a good video or a good live stream to talk to all of you about what games could have been played. What games in the history of college football, if there would have been a different decision made or if something would have broke differently. Now, of course, we can go back to the bowl system pre-BCS and shoot, yes, USC and LSU should have played in 2003 in the BCS. 1994, we should have seen Nebraska and Penn State play. We should have seen Nebraska, Michigan in 1997, of course. But not just talking about the obvious choices that could have been made, but the system boxed us into and dictated what matchups we see. No, but I'm talking about bounces of the ball. They could have changed things and could have set up matchups that people really wanted to see. So, for example, for you NFL fans of the 1970s and 1980s, think the Dallas Cowboys and the Oakland Raiders were two of the dominant franchises outside of the Pittsburgh Steelers, probably the two dominant franchises of the 1970s into the 80s, and they never played in a Super Bowl. But there were so many close calls, like year after year. If you go through the 70s and early 80s, there were like 10 times that they came this close to playing in a Super Bowl against each other, but it never happened. And I bring that up to look at 2015 after what happened in 2014 with Ohio State winning the national championship, defeating Alabama in an epic 42-35 game, and those being, at the time, certainly Alabama was the gold standard, but Ohio State, of course, Urban Meyer takes over, boom, he raises them undefeated, and then another good season in 2013, then they win the national championship. So going into the 2015 season, and Ohio State was consensus number one, the talk around college football was, these are the two, just Urban Meyer, Nick Saban. Well, Ohio State goes 11-1, but they lose the wrong game. They lose to Michigan State. Michigan State gets obliterated 38-0. Did not belong in the playoff from a talent standpoint. Not saying that they shouldn't have been in the playoff. They earned it. But I'm saying from a talent standpoint, a personnel standpoint, and what would have been amazing for college football would have been to see an Alabama-Ohio State rematch in 2015. But again, has nothing to do with the national championship because Ohio State lost the wrong game. They did not earn a playoff spot. Bama's the 2015 champion. 2014, Ohio State won the national championship. Not taking that away from them. Just let's consider that TCU and Baylor had one loss. So the Big 12 botched this situation. They enter a playoff era knowing how the system was going to work, that there was a playoff committee that was going to be selecting teams, 4 teams, and the committee was very upfront, even before the first season, to say conference championships are important. So what does the Big 12 do? They do not institute a conference championship tiebreaker. So what happens? They have a tie for the championship, so they don't really have a champion to say, College Football Playoff Committee, we're going to make this easy for you. Even though Baylor and TCU are both 11-1, well, Baylor won the game head-to-head, so they are our champion. That's the way we do business here in the Big 12. Therefore, that's our candidate for you to select. No, they're co-champions. Well, what's the College Football Playoff Committee supposed to do? They're co-champions. We look at conference championships. We value conference championships. You've got co-champions. Everybody else is playing a conference championship game. The Big 12 just botched that. Ohio State justified the selection. They won a conference championship game. And so, again, Ohio State, the rightful champion. However, you can give an addendum, and we will in our notes. We'll put this in the vaults of the Voice of College Football. I don't know that I'm going to, we'll do a video, and it'll be like 3 hours long, and I'll just list off all the championships when we decide all this, and the side notes, like the Florida State situation in 2023. So that's what it is in 2014. All right. 2013, the final year of the BCS. Florida State, undefeated. They are the national champion. However, everybody takes that as is too. But there's a situation to be considered. And we're not taking away a national championship from Florida State. They were 13-0, and they won the national championship. They were probably 14-0. Anyway, so they played Auburn. Great game. So Auburn was the SEC champion at 12-1, right? Okay, fine. They might have been the second best team in college football. They beat Bama. They beat a good Georgia team. They won the SEC title game against Missouri. I have no issue. I'm not saying that Auburn should not have been selected, but I'm saying that Michigan State deserved it just as much as Auburn. Michigan State went 12-1. They won a great conference. They beat an undefeated Ohio State team in the conference championship game by 10 points. Actually, Michigan State's loss was much more controversial than Auburn's. Michigan State lost to Notre Dame 20-17, I believe was the final score. And if you want to go back and watch a game that had the most bogus pass interference calls that I've ever seen, like multiples, not just one, wasn't like the Rams and the Saints in the conference championship game when there was just the worst playoff pass interference call ever. I'm talking about like 5 of them. So anyway, Michigan State was 12-1. Nobody seems to bring that up. They were the Big Ten champion, 12-1. Why were they not in the BCS championship game? Baylor was 11-1, but of course, I'm not going to necessarily push for them too much because they did not play a conference championship game. Not their fault. And UCF was 11-1, but they're playing in the American Conference, not the same tier, of course. So just consider Michigan State had a gripe in this in 2013. 2012. Okay, we get to our first mess here. And thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate it. Keith is here. Thank you so much for that. Sorry for being hard at times. Keith, you're fine. Good show. Keith, I understand it. I'm a bit rough on the Wolverines from time to time. I try to check my heart at the door, and I just deliver on Michigan football. But that's why we've got guys like John D'Adamo to deliver for Michigan. What these guys are doing on the Michigan channel is phenomenal. first-rate, phenomenal. John, TJ, Ferris, and the crew over on the Michigan channel doing a great job. They are live every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's easy to remember. It's 8 p.m. Eastern time, both nights, Tuesday, Thursday call-in show with the crew on the Michigan channel. John is a member for 16 months. Thank you so much for that, John. Please hit the like and give a super chat if able. Yes, I am going to say something that's probably not the best for business, but I'm going to do it anyway. I hate the super chats. I have said so many times to people that work with me, I have said this so many times. I do not want to build a business that is based on super chats. And hopefully none of you feel that pressure from me in any such way. I come on here. I think I said this to somebody the other day that I don't know what the conversation was, but I don't know that anybody's produced more content than me on YouTube. That would be, hey, if YouTube could, we're waiting for our 100,000 sub plaque. When we get to 100,000 subs, YouTube gives you a plaque. We're waiting on that. The accounting must be off. They've got us at 44,000. I think we're higher than that. I think we're at 105,000. But anyway, we need 55,000 plus to get to 100,000. Then we get that plaque. Maybe YouTube should give out plaques or count the number of videos posted per channel. I don't know who's posted more videos than us, but I have often said, probably on here a few times, but certainly in private a zillion times to people when they've said, you should get more super chats or you should push super chats more. And I've said, that's not how I want to build a business. Begging for super chats. No, I want people to give freely. You should never give in any way to anything out of guilt in any such way. And I will never be able to express how much I appreciate it. But we are going to thrive here at the Voice of College Football based on viewership, driving ad revenue from YouTube, and then getting sponsors and affiliate marketing, but sponsorships, all those things. The Amazon link, there you go. The Amazon link's in the description section, of course. Okay, but thank you so much for that, John. And we got Moose here. Moose, much like Keith, I give Moose a ton of credit because I've poked Moose a bunch of times and he's come back at me, or maybe he started it, but we go back and have a lot of fun. But I appreciate Moose. He does a phenomenal job. And he's on the Michigan channel. He's over here supporting us. Moose, thank you so much for all that you do. Okay, man, this is a great question. Will the SEC ever play 9 games like everyone else? Nick Saban, during his last few years, surprisingly, you would think that he would just think, okay, we've got this system beat. We're good to go. But he wanted to play 9 conference games. I don't think anyone's going to do anything in college football that they don't have to do until they are forced to do it. Notre Dame's not going to join a conference until they are either the financial gap is just going to be so incredibly significant, or let's say the SEC and the Big Ten do take over college football and say, we got 70 total teams. Oh, we got 1 that's not playing in a conference. You don't choose to play in a conference? None of our teams that we now govern are going to play you. So you're going to have to play in a conference. That's what it's going to take for any of these conferences to do anything, or anybody in college football, because there's no governing body to, nobody's forcing the SEC to do anything. As I understand it, the SEC has had conversations with ESPN to say, okay, if we go to 9 games in our season, then look at how much more inventory we give you. So take away the Alabama, Middle Tennessee games and the South Carolina Citadel games and all of those, take away 1 week of those, insert 8, 16, of course, teams playing each other, 8 SEC games. So we get LSU and Missouri, and we've got Arkansas and South Carolina, and we got Alabama playing Kentucky, and we've got Florida playing Texas A&M. We got 8 marketable games now, 8 more. ESPN, how much more are you going to pay us? And apparently there's a divide there. So ESPN's like, well, we'll give you this much more money, and maybe that's not good enough for the SEC. The SEC is not going to do anything that does not serve its own interest. And if they can't make more money, then it doesn't serve their own interest, because they might as well, they have the respect from the committee and from the nation to get as many playoff teams as anybody else, if not more. So why play an extra conference game? And they're going to weight down. The old consideration was, well, if we play an extra conference game, then maybe some of these 6-6 teams could turn into 5-7 teams, and will not get that extra bowl team, 2 bowl teams. Probably, if you did the math, if you went back through history and saw how many teams were on the edge in the SEC to not make a bowl game and would have had to play an extra conference game, probably lost it, because we're talking about like 2-6, 3-5 type SEC teams in conference. They would lose most of those games, or a decent amount. There was no reason for the SEC to add another game, because they probably had another bowl team or 2 each season that would make another $3 or $4 million for the conference. So now it's more about the playoff. Well, you add a conference game, a lot of those 10-2s might become 9-3, or maybe a key one. So they may, I don't think it would cost them a playoff team every year, but I think it might cost them 2 or 3 in 5 years. So they just won't do it. Tom's here, gifting a Voice of College Football membership. And we were in the process of revamping our memberships. So certainly, folks, understand that what you get with your membership, that is not going away in any such way or anything like that. We do have some big plans, though, concerning the 2024 season, and especially for you folks that enjoy a certain aspect of the game. That's all I'll say. But thank you so much for that, Tom. That is very nice of you. And Moose as well. 5. Did I see 5? 5 of those babies. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Moose. You're amazing. Thank you so much as well. You guys are great. Let's get back to our rundown. And again, folks, I apologize. I would love to have graphics to support all of this, but it would just take me forever. And I was spending a couple hours just basically rehashing what we did last year just to make sure I had it straight. Because now it's going to start to get rough. It's going to, some of these situations are going to be difficult to navigate from about 2007 to 12. Okay, 2012. Well, Bama won the national championship, of course. What else needs to be said? Okay, our first consideration is Oregon. Okay. Alabama entered the national championship game at 11-1. They won the SEC championship game. No, wait a minute. 2012. 2012. Yes, they won the SEC championship game. They were 12-1. Oregon only had 1 loss. They lost to a really good Stanford team who went on to win the Pac-12 and go to the Rose Bowl. So that was their loss. Their loss and Bama's loss. Texas A&M, Johnny Manziel, Stanford beat Oregon. Again, that was an excellent Stanford team that won the Rose Bowl. Well, you say, well, Alabama won the SEC. Oregon didn't win a conference because, man, there were a couple years there. I'm telling you that Oregon and or Stanford could have been playing in national championship games, but it seemed like there were about 3 times there where the wrong team won their matchup. It was just like the Pac-12 to screw themselves in these situations where they both had really good teams, Stanford and Oregon. And the team that lost the game seemed to go on and have the better season. And they were the one that needed to win that game to position themselves to play for a national championship. And that's what happened here. Stanford lost twice, but one game was out of conference. So they ended up winning the Pac-12. Oregon only lost the one game to Stanford. So they were still like the number 3 team in the country, but they could not play in the conference championship game. They lost 17-14 to Stanford. So we automatically just think that the Alabama national championship is justified. And of course, we all saw them completely truck Notre Dame. So I'm not saying Alabama was not the best team. Again, this is about who earned it. And Alabama earned it, but we have all these other instances where Alabama's winning national championships after they did not win a conference championship. Maybe the national championship game, in terms of talent and ability of teams, the national championship game probably should have been Alabama and Oregon in 2012. But of course, Notre Dame, they were undefeated. They earned it. I'm not saying that they should not have been there, but I think in retrospect. And then we've got the Ohio State situation. Yes, they were ineligible. But as we comb through the years, I would really like to consider some ineligible teams if the infractions did not involve on the field cheating, or cheating not on the field, cheating that was directed toward on the field situations. Or basically what's happened through the years is, how have programs cheated? They have basically either paid players, that's how they've cheated, or they have altered their grades to keep them eligible, or they have violated rules concerning recruiting to, of course, sign players. So it's all been about cheating to keep players eligible to be on the field. That's what it's all been throughout history. We're taking Michigan out of it for 2023. Everything leading up to 2023 in terms of cheating to impact your team and make your team better has involved those 3 things. If you've got another case that doesn't involve those 3 things, please let me know, because I'm going to bring up the one that didn't. Of course, it's Ohio State and the tattoo gate. That had nothing to do with gaining an advantage on the field. These players had already won their awards. They traded them for tattoos. That was against NCAA rules. I am not saying it's not, that they should not have been, that they should not have been penalized. Of course, they should, even though in retrospect here during the NIL era, it seems completely stupid and ridiculous. And it was, but it was against the rules. But here we are 2 seasons later, and Ohio State's ineligible. Now, if Bama would have won the national championship undefeated, then I would say they're in, that's it, they're done. They're the one. They are it. But Alabama went 13-1, Oregon went 12-1, and Ohio State went 12-0. Now, this is a difficult decision right here. This is a difficult call to make. And I have no idea what you guys are talking about in the chat concerning any of this, or if you are talking about who knows what. Yeah, that gets a little tricky. If nothing else, I believe that Oregon, and this is controversial because Oregon has no national championships, but why? If you look through again how we have awarded teams and allowed teams to play in national championship games that did not win conferences, I got it down right here. Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State. Again, Alabama and Oregon, because they both had the same record, off by 1, 13-1, 12-1. Both won their bowl games against good opponents, top 5 opponents. And then Ohio State was undefeated. So that's where we stand on 2012. 2011. Okay, here we go. Alabama did not win its conference. It did not win its division. They were the best team. They look like the best team. And you get Nick Saban a month to prepare for Les Miles. That's a mismatch. Now, LSU defeated probably the best schedule that I've ever seen. The schedule Florida is playing this year might be better, but they're not going to go undefeated. LSU went undefeated against a ridiculous schedule. Look at LSU's schedule for 2011. And they, of course, beat Alabama on the road. Now let's enter in Oklahoma State in 2011. This is much like 2019 and a few other times that I've cited. I remember sitting right here after 2011. We did not have the voice of college football. Can you imagine life without the voice of college football? Yes, 2011. I'm remembering conversations at work. And being a big college football guy, people would ask me, did the committee get it right? Back then it was the BCS formula. Did they get it right? And I said, here's the deal. If I had to put my mortgage on 2 teams in college football, they would be Alabama and LSU. They are the 2 best teams. But they should not be playing in the national championship. They already played. Oklahoma State deserves a shot. They earned a shot. They've got the same record as Alabama, but Alabama got its shot. Oklahoma State should be playing LSU for the national championship. That's what I believed in 2011. Again, the 2 best teams are Alabama and LSU, but Oklahoma State deserved a shot. And you could also say that LSU and Alabama split 2 games. They had the same record. They split 2 games. Why is Alabama the champion? Well, it's because we've got a format. We've got a system that says there's a season, and then there's a BCS formula that determines who plays in the BCS championship game, and Alabama won that game. So they are the national champion. It's much like in the NFL, the Steelers could beat the Ravens twice in the regular season, and then they could play in the playoffs, and the Ravens could win the game, and people could claim, well, aren't the Steelers better? They beat them twice. They beat them 2 out of 3. Why aren't they getting to advance? Well, because we've got a system, and the system says that the 3rd game was the playoff game that eliminated the Steelers. Much in the same way, Alabama won the BCS championship game. But once we enter Oklahoma State into the conversation to say they were robbed of an opportunity, then they went on and won their BCS bowl game against Stanford to match Alabama's record at, what was it back then? It was 11-1. Then you win the bowl game 12-1. So this is where it starts to get tricky. Here again, Alabama's the national champion, but we're saying Oklahoma State was robbed of a chance. Therefore, They finished with the same record, won a BCS bowl game, won their conference, all of that, which Alabama did not. So if we award Oklahoma State a national championship, well, didn't LSU do the same thing as Oklahoma State? And they even won a conference championship game. And Oklahoma State did not have to play a conference championship game. There was not one in the Big 12 from 2000. They got the conference championship game back in 2017. I can't remember when they did not have a conference championship game. What I was going to do during this was I was going to just let some of my old videos roll in the background because I knew that there was a bunch of schedules and stats going that you guys could check out while we're doing all this business. When did, in 2011, I know there wasn't a Big 12 championship game. I can't remember when they stopped playing the Big 12 championship game. There was one in 07. There was one in 08. There might have been, maybe it was, there was an 09 and 20. I think this was the first season that there was no Big 12 championship game. So that certainly hurt. I'm going to verify that. That certainly hurt Oklahoma State. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Nailed it. 2010, of course, was the Nebraska-Oklahoma Big 12 championship game. And then they came back in 2017 with Oklahoma and TCU. So this was the first year that, I should have thought it through. Of course, Colorado or Texas A&M and Mizzou left for the SEC in 2012. So this is when the Big 12 went down to 10 teams and there was no conference championship game. So Oklahoma State did not play a conference championship game. But neither did Bama. So you've got Bama 12-1, the national champion. You got Oklahoma State won a BCS bowl game and their conference. Unlike Bama, they're 12-1. But if you give Oklahoma State a national championship as well, then you re-enter LSU, right? Because they did everything Oklahoma State did against a much better schedule. They won against Alabama. They won a conference championship game. They finished 12-1 or 13-1. They finished with a better record. So in 2011, if you're following my logic, we've got 3 national champions: Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma State. This is fun. I love doing this. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for being here. We made it back through to 2011. We will pick it up from here next time we get together. So we wanted to do the all-time rankings, but I figured we got to clean up the national championships before we go to the all-time rankings. So we're going to pick it up with 2010, which is an easy one. We could get it out of the way right now. Auburn won the national championship. They were undefeated. There was nobody else that should have played them because Oregon was the only other Power 5 national champion or undefeated team to play Auburn. So that's clear cut. A nice note for TCU. They did finish undefeated, and they beat a number 4 Wisconsin team in the Rose Bowl, 21-19, I do recall. And even 2009, we can get that off the board as well. That was easy. Bama won. They beat an undefeated Texas team. We had 2 undefeated teams playing in the BCS championship game. And Boise State, again, we'll give them some kudos, but we are not giving a group of 5 team a national championship. when they have the same record. Just doesn't make sense in any way. They have to have a better record at least. So Auburn in 2010, no doubt. 2009, Bama, no doubt. 2008, 2007 are messy, messy, messy. We'll catch up with those next time. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We've got a special interview coming up with Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, on Monday. Check out the conversations we've had in recent days with Steve Dace a couple times, Phil Steele, Peter Burns, SEC Network, and somebody else escapes me. But anyway, Tony Barnhart showing up on Monday. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will get together soon, maybe on Sunday, and continue to work through the national championships. Thank you so much for your generosity, and we will see you soon.